They were sitting in my house, eating food I paid for, when my father's voice cut through the room like venom. He said my son and I were nothing but leeches feeding off the family. My mother's lips curled into a satisfied smile, her head nodding slightly, as if she had rehearsed that moment for years. The irony was almost absurd. Every plate on that table, every glass of wine in their hands, came from my labor. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I looked straight at them and told them they had 24 hours to leave. The room went dead quiet, thick and suffocating. But that night wasn't spontaneous. I had been preparing for it long before anyone realized. From the outside, no one would have guessed how splintered we were. In holiday photos, we smiled too wide, the kind of family neighbors envied. My mother volunteered at church bake sales with her homemade pies. My father worked every barbecue like he was shaking hands on a campaign trail. And my brother Knox, he was the shining star. Every conversation circled back to him, his ambitions, his newest big idea. I was different. Quiet. Reliable. The backup plan. The one expected to absorb the fallout when things collapsed. That dinner wasn't a random eruption. It was years of small cuts finally stitched into one long, aching scar. I still remember being a little girl, barefoot on the cold kitchen tiles, listening to my mother hum over a simmering pot of chili. She smelled like cinnamon and laundry soap, ordinary on the surface, but always carrying that unspoken warning. Don't stir the water. Don't ask questions. Put the family first, even if it costs you yourself. That rule wrapped around me like invisible bars. By 16, I understood my place. Knox could wreck a car, and Dad would chuckle it away. Boys will be boys. I brought home an A- in physics, and Mom would sigh softly. Don't be so hard on yourself, Nova. Not everyone shines like Knox. At night I'd stare at the glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to my ceiling, wondering if anyone saw me beyond what I gave up. 10 years later, I had my own child, Asher, my steady ground, proof that something pure could still exist. He's 12 now, kind-hearted and bright, still trusting the world. When he was born, wrapped in hospital white, his tiny fingers gripping mine, I made myself a promise. He would never disappear into the background. Maybe that's why that dinner hurt so deeply. He was upstairs, probably lying flat against the floor, hearing every poisonous word his grandfather spat, and every cutting silence his grandmother let linger. The thought hollowed me out. What kind of inheritance was I passing down if I let that same bitterness seep into him? The house where they tore me down was mine. I earned it. Long nights under buzzing office lights. Code reviews stretching into sunrise. Meetings where I had to outperform everyone just to be considered capable. Every wall, every tile, every beam was built from sacrifice. My family never bothered to notice. Still, they sat there, forks scraping my plates, wine swirling in my glasses, behaving as though my effort belonged to them. And it wasn't new. The calls had become routine. Can you cover rent this month? Dad's truck broke down again. Knox just needs a little startup money. He's so close. At first, I told myself it was temporary, family helping family through a tough season. But the season never ended. It hardened into expectation. Expectation turned into obligation. Obligation became chains I couldn't see, but always felt. I learned to recognize my mother's tone before she even made the ask, a practiced tremble, carefully measured. My father skipped pleasantries entirely. His requests came as commands. Knox stayed above it all, saving his charm for investors while they did the pleading for him. And I kept saying yes. Each time, it felt like I was purchasing a scrap of value. Each time, I swore it would be the last. So when I looked my father in the eye and gave him a day to pack, it wasn't sudden courage. It was pressure finally collapsing inward. What snapped wasn't my anger. It was my capacity to endure. The ending didn't roar in. It slipped in quietly, like cold air sneaking under a locked door until the entire room turns frigid. It started with a phone call. My mother's name glowing on my screen just as I was about to close my laptop. I hesitated, already bracing. Her calls rarely carried anything good. Still, I answered, holding on to the smallest hope that maybe this time would be different. Her voice shook, but I knew the rhythm. The same rehearsed distress. Nova, she said, your father needs surgery. They say his heart could fail if we don't act quickly. And the house we're 300,000 behind. The bank's threatening foreclosure. I pressed my palm against the cool office window, city lights blurring beneath me. I wanted to believe her, but I'd walked this road too many times. The figures were dramatic. The details were vague. The request stayed the same. Help us. Instead of agreeing, I told her to come to dinner. Bring Dad. Bring Knox. We'd talk face to face. She paused a fraction too long before saying yes, as if the idea unsettled her. That night, after Asher fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote rules on a yellow sticky note as though they were sacred vows. No insulting my son. No money. If it turns hostile, end it. I slid the note beneath my plate like a talisman. Even so, anxiety churned in my stomach. I called Tessa, my constant since college, the one who had stood beside me through every storm. We met at our regular coffee shop on 6th Street, the corner booth by the window. She was already spinning a pencil between her fingers when I sat down. They're lying, she said after I finished. Maybe not, I argued weakly, though doubt weighed down my voice. Nova, come on.
No paperwork?
No medical records? No bank notices? They want your money, not your support. You can't keep draining yourself for people who'd let you run dry. The truth of it stung. Then she leaned closer, voice low and firm. Record the dinner. Texas is a one-party consent state. If this blows up, you'll have proof. Don't let them twist the story again. I nodded, my stomach tight, promising myself I would. The next day dragged. Every tick of the clock scraped against my nerves. When evening finally arrived, I set the table carefully. For plates. For glasses. Napkins folded square. Silverware polished. Outside, the pool reflected the porch light, motionless, like even the water was holding its breath. Asher sat on the couch, homework spread out in front of him, like a shield. I brushed hair from his forehead. Tonight's grown-up stuff, I murmured. You're staying with Harper. He groaned, but didn't argue. He was used to sudden changes. When the knock sounded, it thudded straight into my chest. Mom walked in first, arms loaded with barbecue, like she was attending a cheerful gathering. Dad followed, smaller than I remembered, but his eyes still sharp and cold. Knox came last, phone buzzing in his hand, a confident smirk already in place. We sat. Mom filled the air with chatter. Neighbors, birthdays, her famous potato salad. The usual warm-up before the cut. I stopped her mid-sentence. Show me the documents. Hospital paperwork. Bank notices.
Anything.
Her smile faltered. Dad glanced at Knox. Knox shifted in his seat. There isn't paperwork, Mom finally admitted, her voice tightening. You'll have to trust us. Trust. That word hit harder than any insult. It had always been their weapon. Trust us when your college fund vanished. Trust us when Knox's last business collapsed. Trust us while you worked yourself to exhaustion to keep everything afloat. Knox jumped in, smooth and persuasive. This next project is different. Augmented reality. You're in tech. You understand the potential. We just need a small push to get started. I stared at him, jaw clenched. He had turned my own career into bait. Then my father slammed his hand on the table, silverware rattling. You make $350 a year, Nova. How can you sit there and watch your family sink? My mother's voice softened, but the blade beneath it was sharper. Asher's a wilder too. Don't you want him to know his roots? They pulled my son into it, used him like leverage. My hands trembled under the table, but my voice came out steady. I won't trade my child's future to clean up your mess. Not anymore. Knox let out a bitter laugh. Playing the martyr again? You got lucky. Some of us actually have vision. Some of us have to fight. The room seemed to tilt. Their faces blurred through my anger. My mother's expression hardened. My father's hands curled into fists. Accusations collided in the air. And then Knox slipped. The debt, he blurted. Most of it's mine. Mom and Dad just stepped in for me. Everything went still. Mom's color drained. Dad turned away, shame flickering across his features. That was the truth. It was never about surgery or foreclosure. It was always about Knox. My mother's eyes hardened, cold and frantic. "If you don't help, I'll take this public," she whispered. "Everyone will see what kind of daughter you are. I'll drag Asher into it if I have to." The threat cut through me like ice water. She would weaponize my child. In that instant, something inside me settled, quiet, final, immovable. "You have 24 hours, I repeated, my voice steady and absolute. The silence that followed pressed in on all sides. In that stillness, I understood this wasn't a family disagreement anymore. It was war. When the door slammed behind them, the house didn't feel peaceful. It felt hollow, echoing with everything that had just splintered. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. Each sound seemed sharpened, slicing through the quiet. I picked up their untouched plates and set them in the sink one by one. The clang of porcelain against steel echoed like the years I had spent trying to save people who only dragged me under. Relief didn't come. Grief did. Not for them, for the illusion I had clung to. Upstairs, light spilled from beneath Asher's door. He had returned from Harper's just before they left. He sat cross-legged on his bed, sketching rockets as if the foundation of our world hadn't shifted downstairs. "Did they leave?" he asked without looking up. "Yes." "For good?" I hesitated. "We'll see." He nodded faintly, still drawing flames bursting from the back of a crooked rocket. I kissed the top of his head. "You don't need to worry. I've got us." The words were meant for him, but I was trying to convince myself. The next morning, the vibration started, constant and relentless. Not calls. Notifications. My stomach dropped when I saw the source. TikTok. My mother filled the screen like she had been waiting for a stage. Tears fell perfectly as she spoke about her heartless daughter who abandoned her parents when they were desperate. She even held up photos of me and Asher in front of our West Austin house, displaying them like evidence of my cruelty. The hashtags landed like stones. Ungrateful daughter. Family betrayal. Heartless. I scrolled until my fingers shook. Strangers dissected my character as if they knew me. Some defended my parents. Others tore me apart. How could she do that? Poor father. Imagine being kicked out by your own child. That boy deserves better. That boy. Asher. My chest tightened. If she pulled him fully into this, he'd be ridiculed before he even understood the word betrayal. By noon, the video had crossed 100,000 views. By evening, 500,000. At work, I felt the shift before I heard it, the murmurs trailing behind me. My manager called me into his office, voice careful. "Everything okay at home, Nova? Anything we should know?" I smiled and assured him it was under control. Inside, I was burning. Tessa didn't wait for me to call. She met me at our usual booth, laptop already open, expression sharp. "Save everything," she said. Screenshots. Links. Dates. Timestamps. Her voice was calm but firm. "This isn't gossip. It's defamation. They're not just embarrassing you. They're attacking your reputation. So you answer with proof." And I did. Every video. Every comment. Every message that trickled in afterward. By midnight, a folder labeled case sat on my desktop. Clinical. Clean. It felt like armor. The days blurred. My father texted, begging for one last bridge loan. Knox posted his own clips, rewriting the narrative into a tragic tale where I had crushed his dreams. My mother followed with fresh performances, hinting at my supposed divorce and a broken home for Asher. Then, in the middle of it all, Marin called my real estate attorney, steady and composed. "There's a clause in your parents' mortgage," she said. "They refinanced 2 years ago. It's in default. The bank can sell to any qualified buyer without their approval. If you want the house, this is your opportunity." For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. Not defense. Action. I gathered documents, signed authorization papers, and within days, the process began. The East Austin house, the one where my college savings had vanished into Knox's failed venture, was about to belong to me. It wasn't just a purchase. It was reclamation. When the sale closed, Marin sent official notice. My parents and Knox had 24 hours to vacate or face legal eviction. She also issued a cease and desist regarding the online videos. Knox exploded, flooding my phone with accusations. Traitor. Jealous. Selfish. My father shifted tactics, offering repayment plans he couldn't possibly honor. My mother doubled down online, her followers cheering her on. But their noise no longer reached me. I hired cleaners, changed the locks, walked through the East Austin house like someone reopening an old wound. Dust hung in the air, heavy with memory. In the attic, beneath boxes of decorations and rusted tools, the cleaning crew found a worn container. Inside were my grandfather's original will, old bank statements, and a letter addressed to me. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. His handwriting was shaky but clear. The money is for Nova's education. No one else's dream. No one else's debt. My vision blurred. Proof. After years of being painted as selfish, here was quiet, undeniable validation. I added the letter to my archive. Another piece of truth in a fight I never wanted but would no longer avoid. While I gathered evidence, Asher tried to keep his world steady. Basketball practice, science projects, late nights with his telescope aimed at the sky. But whispers followed him to school. One night, he looked up from his sketches. Why does Grandma hate us? The question sliced through me. She doesn't hate you, I said carefully. She's made choices that hurt people. And sometimes when people are hurting, they try to pull others into it. He nodded slowly and returned to drawing, pencil moving across the page, as if it could erase what neither of us could say. Later, I sat alone on the back porch, staring at the still pool water trembling under the porch light. Every compromise, every swallowed protest, every boundary I'd allowed them to cross replayed in my mind. Then something shifted. I was done defending myself. My mother could keep performing. Knox could cling to his fantasies. My father could polish his guilt. But I had what they couldn't distort anymore. The truth.
Signed. Written. Real.
The next time we faced each other, I wouldn't stand empty-handed. I would have documents, proof, and every scar reshaped into resolve. This time, the reckoning belonged to me. Airports aren't meant for endings, even though people pretend they are. New beginnings, honeymoons, reunions. For me, the Austin terminal felt like a courtroom without walls. Their flight landed late afternoon. I stood beyond the security rope. Marin at my side, composed as ever, a folder pressed firmly in her hands. The air smelled of jet fuel and stale fries. A muted television flickered overhead, but all I heard was my heartbeat. Knox emerged first, walking like he owned the spotlight, phone already raised, smirk half-formed. My mother followed, clutching a neck pillow, face arranged in practiced exhaustion. My father trailed behind, slower, eyes scanning the crowd as if calculating angles. They spotted me immediately. My mother's face lit up, not with relief, but with confidence. She stepped forward. Nova, thank God. We knew you'd come around. I didn't move. Marin stepped ahead instead and handed each of them an envelope. You've been served.
Confusion flickered.
Then disbelief. Knox tore his open, scanning the pages until the color drained from his face. You bought the house? He demanded. Yes, I replied evenly. It's legally mine. If you're not out by the deadline, the sheriff will handle it. My father's jaw clenched tight. My mother blinked, speechless, as travelers slowed around us, drawn to the tension. A child nearby tugged his mother's sleeve. What's happening? Knox's voice rose, theatrical and desperate. You're a thief. You've always hated me. Jealous. Trying to destroy me. I stepped closer, voice low but cutting through the noise. You mean since you emptied my college fund? Since you made promises you never kept and left me sleeping on floors while you played visionary? Gasps rippled through the small crowd. They didn't know the history, but they felt the fracture. Knox tried to meet my eyes. eyes, but he couldn't hold it. His gaze slipped away. My mother rushed to fill the space, her voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. We did it for the family, Nova.
For you.
You've just grown so cold. We were trying to survive. I reached into my bag and withdrew my grandfather's letter. The paper was worn with age, but steady in my hands. This was never yours to use, I said. He left it for my education. Not your debts. Not Knox's fantasies. You turned his trust into an excuse. For the first time, her tears halted mid-performance. My father tried to reclaim control, his voice booming as if he were presiding over a courtroom. Enough. You don't disgrace your family in public. I lifted my chin.
You did that yourselves.
Every lie, every dollar, every attempt to drag my child into your mess. It ends here. Something shifted behind his eyes. Not remorse, fear. The kind that comes when authority finally slips through your fingers. Marin stepped forward, voice calm and precise. You've been formally served. Any contact outside legal channels will be treated as harassment. Violate the order, and consequences will follow. Around us, travelers slowed, pretending not to stare while angling their phones. The humiliation they'd tried to aim at me had turned back on them. Knox cracked first. You'll regret this, he shouted. You think you're superior because you got lucky? You're nothing without us. I leaned in, steady and quiet.
No.
I'm better because I refuse to become you. His face contorted, rage flashing, but even he wasn't reckless enough to swing under a dozen recording phones. My mother made one final attempt, her voice breaking. Please, Nova. Don't do this. We'll lose everything. I met her gaze, the woman who taught me to shrink, to swallow hurt without complaint. And for the first time, I felt nothing.
No fury. No grief.
Just the clean weight of freedom. So did I replied. When you took that from me at 18, you showed me what loss feels like. Now you'll live with it. The silence that followed felt seismic, splitting something permanent. My father's shoulders sagged. My mother's composure collapsed inward. Knox trembled, the last trace of arrogance cracking apart. Security approached, drawn by the noise. Marin explained smoothly, handing over the documents. The officers nodded, their presence sealing the moment like a final verdict. As they were guided toward baggage claim, my mother turned back, searching my face for doubt. She found none. I stood still, breath even, hands steady. For once, the weight wasn't mine to carry. When the crowd dispersed, I lowered myself onto a bench, adrenaline rippling through me. Marin sat beside me, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. You did it, she said. But I knew victories like this echo. Public battles rarely fade quietly. Still, under the fluorescent glare of the terminal, I allowed myself something I hadn't felt in years. Triumph. Not the loud kind. Not applause or celebration. The quiet kind that comes from surviving and reclaiming what was yours. Stepping out into the Texas sun, my phone buzzing in my pocket, I thought of Asher, his drawings, his telescope, his quiet resilience. Whatever storm followed, I would meet it the same way. Because now I knew I could win. The days after the airport felt strange, like walking into a room where everything had been rearranged. The air was the same, but the weight of it had shifted. For once, my phone was silent. No desperate pleas from my mother. No grandiose pitches from Knox. No thunder from my father. The quiet felt unfamiliar. It didn't last. My mother posted again, her final act. No tears this time. No direct accusations. She turned on Knox instead, voice tight and defensive, claiming he'd pulled her into his schemes. She insisted she'd only tried to help. It should have felt like vindication. Instead, it felt empty. When apologies are delivered through a public platform, they lose meaning. Knox unraveled next. His videos grew frantic. The charm faded, replaced by blame and panic. He ranted about betrayal, about how I had stolen his future. But reality had caught up. His company was gone. His reputation fractured. The house that once housed his ambitions no longer within reach. Eventually, even his supporters drifted away. My father did something more shocking than any speech. He vanished into silence. No messages.
No justifications.
Just absence. The legal process moved steadily. Marin guided each step with careful precision. The will, the financial records, the refinance paperwork. Together, they formed a story that couldn't be rewritten. The judge ruled in my favor. The property secured. Protection granted against further harassment. There was no money to reclaim. That part of my life had already burned away. But acknowledgement mattered. The truth now existed in official record, not just inside me. The East Austin house was officially mine. I hired a team to clear it out. Years of dust and forgotten things. They uncovered boxes of broken electronics, unopened mail, photo albums fading at the edges. I kept only one item, my grandfather's letter. Everything else I released. On the final day, Asher came with me. We stood beneath the wide pecan tree in the yard, its branches heavy with summer leaves. "Can we plant one at our house?" he asked. I smiled.
Yes.
"This time we'll watch it grow." Back in West Austin, we dug into the warm soil together. We planted a young pecan tree, small but sturdy. Asher inspected it each morning, convinced it might shoot up overnight. I told him something my grandfather once told me. Trees and trust both need time. Life slowly steadied. Friday taco nights returned. Homework spread across the kitchen table. Laughter replaced the tension that once hovered over every meal. When a journalist reached out, I agreed to speak. Not to shame them, but for the people still trapped in silence. The article went live, honest and unpolished. Messages flooded in. Strangers sharing their own wounds. Daughters blamed. Sons shamed for setting boundaries. Reading them, I felt something close to healing. The relief of knowing survival leaves evidence. One warm evening, while Asher worked on a science project, Tessa and I sat on the porch, cicadas humming in the trees. "You could turn this into something bigger," she said. "Helping people like you. Taking what your mom tried to destroy and using it to protect others." I considered it. Advocacy. Building community. Transforming wreckage into purpose.
For the first time, it didn't intimidate me.
It felt right. That night, I tucked Asher into bed. He slid a drawing beneath his pillow, a rocket aimed toward Mars, flames blazing bright. And I knew, just as surely as that rocket would rise, so would we. I kissed his forehead. "You're free to dream, Ash. No one will take that from you." When I turned off the light, the real victory became clear. It wasn't defeating my family. It was building one with my son. A family rooted in love. Guarded by boundaries. Grown with honesty. The pecan tree outside would take years before it bore fruit. But it was ours, a living promise that something strong could grow from ruin. People say family means safety. Shelter.
Love.
But sometimes the ones tied to you by blood are the first to wound you. For years, I wore their betrayal like armor, believing if I gave just a little more, they would finally see me. They never did. And that's the truth I want you to carry. Love without respect isn't love. It's control disguised as devotion. So I chose differently. I chose peace. I chose my son. I chose to stop apologizing for protecting what we built. If you've ever stood in that impossible place, torn between saving yourself and staying loyal to the ones who hurt you, know this. You are not alone. Sometimes the bravest act isn't forgiveness. It's refusal. Refusing to shrink. To bend. To walk back into the flames that burned you. If this story stirred something quiet inside you, share it in the comments.
Tell your own story.
Because every time we speak, silence loses. And if you want more stories like this, stories that remind you it's never too late to take back your voice, subscribe. It matters more than you know.